treat them like broadband up to 10 minutes or whatever, but use the whole 10 minutes if you'd like to. So, shall we start with you, William?
Okay.
Tell us why you're standing, a bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'll start with a bit about myself first of all. I've actually got a long family connection with Brent Central. My grandparents moved into the area in 1930 and lived on Dollis Hill Avenue. And the first house I ever lived in was Hamilton Road, I think, in Dollis Hill. So my early childhood years were spent around here. Then we moved away. My brother and I then moved back into Willesden Green in the mid-80s and have been here ever since. My grandfather was editor of Willesden and Brent Chronicle when he was alive, and so we have a long history with Brent and Willesden Green in particular. I live in Willesden Green, which is part of the Brent Central constituency. I've been working in the performing arts for over 48 years, first as an actor and as a singer, then as a manager. I've run companies, and for the last 25 years I've been working as an opera director. So I have a very broad set of skills. I've had to do lots of planning, lots of logistics, financial management, personnel management, marketing, all sorts of things. And I joined the Green Party in April of 17. I'd been becoming increasingly depressed about the state of two-party politics. I was horrified by the result of the referendum. And there was this brilliant woman who kept on popping up on the television all the time, who spoke passionately, intelligently. She spoke common sense and she spoke from her heart, and that was of course Caroline Lucas. And she is the real reason why I joined the party. I found her to be a truly inspirational leader, because at that point she was the leader of the party. I obviously agreed with all the policies that the Green Party was standing for, and I felt immediately at one with the Green Party, and I was very happy to be a member. In the council elections of last year, I was approached to see if I would be a paper candidate. I'd never stood for public office before, but I stood and was certainly not a paper candidate. I did a great deal of campaigning on the street, leaflet distribution. Pete and I, and indeed Martin, spent many hours standing either outside Sainsbury's or Willesden Green Tube at the weekends, berating people as much as possible and handing out a lot of leaflets. And I found it a very stimulating, enjoyable experience, actually talking to people about why they should be voting Green. And I'm standing on four main things. Two of them are completely indivisible. And we'll stop for a minute. That's probably Maxim. I'll wait till it comes in. Do you have to edit it?
No, I'll edit it out.
That's unhelpful timing. Okay. Well, hello.
It's an ordinary phone, isn't it? Come and sit down.
Let's, I think I'm going to turn that off. Yeah.
Nope, it's done. It's gone down. Maxim, this is Simon.
Hello.
Morris, William, we know, and Pete. William is just into his spiel, so if you want to carry on.
Yes. So I'm standing on four main issues. Two of them are, as far as I'm concerned, completely indivisible. One of those being the environment, and the other being Brexit. We are, I mean, I don't need to tell anybody in this room, or indeed who probably is watching the video, what damage is being done continually to the environment. It's one of the principal reasons why the Green Party in this country was formed, was to make people aware of the abuse of the planet that we are part of. I had a very interesting experience about 2 years ago. I was working with somebody who was part of a major recycling organisation. I cannot remember the name of it, somewhere based in the Midlands. And she was distraught. She was very committed to the whole notion of recycling and continually reusing the resources that the planet has given us. And she was distraught about the lack of joined-up thinking with our recycling across the country, that every single council has got its own policy about recycling. Now, of course, there are local issues that have to be taken into account for each area, but the fact that there aren't rules governing the whole country about what is recycled, how it's recycled, and where it's recycled. And we are facing a catastrophe because now, of course, China is refusing to take Europe's waste to the extent that they were doing. And so we have to look at this incredibly seriously. Fortunately, most of the major parties now have realised this and are doing what they can. We're introducing the emission rates and things like that, so that there is work now finally being done. It's not quite enough, and it's rather late in the day. But of course, I will be campaigning on that front immensely. I will be joining you on Friday morning, and you on Friday morning. But that also is part of my argument about Brexit, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the most ridiculous thing that any Western democracy has ever done to itself. If we are foolish enough to leave Europe, how can we then play an important radical role in rescuing the planet? It's not possible. We have to stay in Europe for financial and social reasons as well. But if we're not part of that massive organisation, that massive trading bloc, we stand no chance of being heard. And this country has done we have a not bad record in saving the planet, but we will be immensely reduced if we're not part of, if we do not stay as part of Europe. So those are my two main things. I am appalled by the outrageous hypocrisy of the Conservative Party and the amount of austerity that they've brought in, the cuts that have been existing for 10 years and have ruined people's lives. Not so much in London, although of course it has happened in London, but elsewhere in the country it's had devastating effects on millions of people's lives. And now they've suddenly found this extra £13.5 billion as an electioneering campaign, and this hypocrisy has got to be exposed and has got to be stopped. And then the final issue is that of electoral reform. Our electoral system is not fit for purpose. It hasn't been during my adult life, ever, and is increasingly proven to be unfit for purpose. We would not be in the mess that we are in now if we had some form of proportional representation. Very few countries in the world don't have it anymore. America, France, and I think Canada being the main exceptions, they also, like us, do not have proportional representation. And I'm not just saying that because I want there to be more Green MPs, which I certainly do, but how else can you engage people unless they know that each vote counts? It's a nonsense. And I need to wind up. So I'm going to wind up because I've sort of covered my 4 points. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, over to Simon Rebbit.
Thank you.
For Brent North.
Brent North. I'm not from Brent North. I was born near Brighton, so I've got that slight connection, I suppose, but not actually Brighton Hove itself. But I have been living in Brent North now for 10 years, near Norfolk Park Hospital. So I feel like it's the community that I live in. I'm a teacher. The schools I've worked in have all been around that area, Whitmore in Harrow, Alperton in Brent. Yes, I'm currently a teacher teaching history, humanities, geography, politics, and a little bit of religion. So, frankly, I wasn't really that interested in politics myself until I became a politics teacher. I didn't really understand.
That's lucky.
At that point, though, I did find it interesting to actually see, as you've sort of already run through already, the hypocrisies and the real issues with our democracy that we live in today. I don't want to go on the same thing too much on the same things you've already said, but another referendum that really upset me was the 2011 referendum for changing the electoral system, only to AV, which was hardly much of a step in the right direction, but it was at least something. The turnout for that was so demoralising for me when I saw that less than 30%, or I can't remember now, it was very, very, very low. And that it screams me, because if you just take a moment to look at what first past the post does, you will see that it makes absolutely no sense. And it's not simply that the parties like the Green Party, who people do support, I believe, but perhaps are scared into voting for one of the two big ones. It's not just that political representation, it's that social representation. And I mean, right now we are sitting, and we're all of us white males, but especially we all live in an area of London with a far greater diversity of people, and it's what makes, I think, London such a great city, one of the best cities in the world. And the idea that the children I teach, maybe of an Indian Gujarati background or a Somali Muslim background, don't have representatives like that in Parliament or in any sort of form of government is very upsetting. So that electoral reform is a huge issue for me. I'm just going to jump around when I remember things. My background before this is I have a bachelor's from the University of Reading. Now I did my teacher training at the University of Oxford, and then I went on to do a master's there. What else? Before I was teaching, all my family are teachers, in fact, so I wanted, which is a little embarrassing, I wanted to try a few other things first. So I worked in a few other places, but I enjoy working with children, I enjoy teaching, I enjoy trying to pass on knowledge and trying to make it interesting and fun. I joined the Green Party after I did the dismal attempt by Corbyn and Labour to try and rally the nation during the 2016 EU-UK membership referendum, which I didn't think it did a good enough job. That's when I thought, looking at the Green Party, that's where I want to go. But going through the manifesto that they talk about, there's so many things there that I'm like, well, that's exactly what I think, and that's exactly what I think. And the smaller things like unilateral nuclear disarmament, for example, is just another embarrassment on the sort of society that we live in today, that we live in such a world like that, where we've got the capacity to destroy ourselves. In terms of green movement, I mean, I feel bad because I don't always use the recycling bin, or if there isn't one there. But my girlfriend, who's Canadian, they have a far larger recycling sort of effort there, and just seeing her discuss the way that we aren't pushing as hard as we could the recycling sort of policies here shows that it can be done. It is easy to do if we're committed to it. So we're trying to recycle, trying to cycle to work myself every day now, rather than a car with a tube. But yeah, at the moment, the thing that's obviously taking up everyone's attention at the moment is the possible leaving the EU. The Prime Minister at the moment, I believe, is a liar. I believe he will use or say anything to get what he is trying to do. I believe the whole reason why he's Prime Minister now is because he took advantage of the Leave campaign to help his career, and he doesn't care about this country. As a politics teacher, I've met Barry Gardiner, who is the current Labour MP for Brent North, and I think he has done some great things, but I just think Labour are not truly representative. They're not prepared to make a decision such as to go against Brexit, and we need a change to do that, and we need to offer that alternative for people who think that way.
Okay, so now it's a chance for this vast audience here to put their questions to candidates. We'll do them at the same time, I think, because it's sort of national issues as much as anything we'll do. So, anyone like to kick off?
In terms of being candidates, if we had an election, have you got the time? Because to be a candidate, I imagine, would have been stood for office myself.
Yes.
In that way. Would you have the time either of you to
Do you want to answer? I mean, it's very difficult.
Well, definitely so.
Do you want to
start better answer.
my situation, I'm a freelancer. and so I have large periods of time when I'm not doing any formal work. My next production, I start rehearsals on October 14th and it opens November 25th. So in one respect, I was rather disappointed that we didn't have the election on October 14th, because that would have fitted in perfectly, but that's neither here nor there. Certainly once the production is over, I'm full of fancy free again. I think it's very unlikely that the election will be called until after October the 31st. Very unlikely, in which case the actual election won't be until December. I certainly would have weekends free if there's campaigning to do between October the 14th and the 25th of November. So I will have some time in production, and when I'm out of production, I will have as much time as is needed.
As a teacher, of course, I've got my term times to keep there. Plus, it's a new school that I've started this year, so there are difficulties with that. And I am very interested in this process, but at the same time, it was because there was a lack of options that I was happy to put myself forward. I would like to contribute my time, especially if it falls in a holiday, then that's a lot easier, of course. And some people, mean people, will say that teachers only really have to work till 3 o'clock anyway, I suppose. So I'm sure that's not anyone here, but so it would be more difficult for me, and I probably wouldn't be able to commit as much time. But I've told my politics class, they're very excited. A lot of them have promised they're going to join up to the Green Party. So if nothing else, I've maybe got a few votes there. Yeah, it's Alberton last time, and they're aware of it. But Norfolk, which is in North Ealing.
Can you find me my politics teacher, please?
Who's where are you?
QBCS, Queen's Park Community School.
Oh right.
My politics teacher is an ex-Liberal Democrat, and he's great, but I think a Green teacher would be
better.
That's great. So did he help you get involved in politics, or like you were interested before?
Yeah.
But it's nice as a teacher hearing the students get involved, and I'm not saying any of them would, but they have expressed an interest to help out as well. So, but in answer to the question, I can't promise as much as perhaps others, but I would be committed to the process.
I think it's worth pointing out that a lot of the dates will be in the evening. There tend to be more hustings and things in Brent Central than in Brent North. Brent North isn't quite as politically aware. Barry Gardner thinks he's got it all sewn up tight. Sometimes we have schools inviting us in. We've had Harrow College invited us in, and various pensions associations and so on. As I say, most of those are in the evening. As regards of leafleting door to door, we can get other people, particularly the retired members, to help out with that during daytime. So don't feel you've got to do the whole thing yourself. It's a shared responsibility.
Okay, great. Yeah, the evenings are more free. I don't have children, for example, so it's not quite so committed there.
A question from me, if that's okay. There's quite a lot of talk at the moment and discussion within the Green Party about working with the Liberal Democrats and Scot Nationalists and so on. Some people disagree with that. Some people feel that Corbyn's Labour Party, which is beginning to address green issues, I think as you were saying, is actually a better option for a group of people to be working with. Where would you stand on that?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. That's a really important point, and it's one that I've been considering myself, because at the moment the priority is staying in Europe, I would say, and for that it feels that you do need to work together where you can, and if that means supporting Liberal Democrats or Labour, then that has been something that's crossed my mind as something that might be the best option to do that. But at the same time, I also think that I want to follow the party that I believe in, and I want to actually work with the principles that we are following. And we can't do that if we are just bound by agreements with the Lib Dems or with Labour. And I think that we're different, and I think people maybe don't always see that. That that we're a Liberal party with green features, and that's not true. We have, looking at our manifesto, we have developed over the years some really good policies that will apply to everything. So I'd be open to sort of coalitions or alliances where necessary. I'm not completely ignoring it, but my position, I would say, is that we're the Green Party and we should be proud of that. We should fight for that.
I agree with a lot of that. I think in the immediate circumstance in which we find ourselves, what my hope is that after the next election, that there will be a caretaker coalition government, and that despite what Jo Swinson is saying at the moment, all the Remain parties, and I kind of put Labour into that bracket, will form some form of coalition and have to talk together, because it's the only real way of stopping Brexit from happening. Once that's done, then absolutely I think we should keep our own identity as much as possible. The last time we had a major coalition government, it was caused a disaster, and it has cost the Lib Dems years of and hundreds of thousands of votes. We all have to go. Again, if we have proportional representation, that will take care of itself. Because each party will then have its own clear voice, but also have to talk to each other. That doesn't really answer your question, but that's what I think about it at the moment.
Yeah, I've got one. How would you explain the policy, the Green Party policy, of a Green New Deal?
I don't know. I'm going to be absolutely honest. I don't know how I would explain that.
Could you clarify what you mean exactly?
Well, I was hoping that you as a candidate would know.
I don't. I'm sorry, I don't.
Well, okay, I'll say what it means. Essentially, it's a project whereby you expand employment in industries which are producing recyclables and renewable energy, while contracting fossil fuel-based industries. And the idea being that in that expansion you create new employment, hence it is a new deal, because you are creating new jobs, as the original New Deal in America in the 1930s did. I don't expect anybody in the streets going to ask you that, only nerds like me, but anyway.
Do you want me to answer that?
Well, okay, you can answer it now, because I told you the answer. No, if you want to say something about it.
I didn't know that was the full name for it.
Worth getting up on, if you're going to.
Yes, I didn't know that was the actual.
Because I think the idea is, to some extent, to be green implies some sort of cutting back on some things that have been pushing the economy forward. So GDP,
yes.
For example, measuring GDP,
yes,
it means burning more resources, not just carbon, but all resources.
Yes.
So we're using up the Earth's resources, and we're cutting out others, biodiversity and so on. But so if we said at the same time that yes, we do have to reduce some traditional things that we've been doing. Fuel holidays, maybe any more than one trip abroad might have to be heavily taxed, so that people really do reduce. So that some industries may go way down. But if we put vast amounts of energy into things like insulation of every house in the country,
would you create jobs immediately?
Really putting effort into renewable sources of energy long term, then that would create jobs.
Yes.
So we wouldn't just be negative in terms of effect on the economy. I think that's what it is.
Surely for those policies to be effective, and I do hope that they are, you do need to make them look like a positive, that something good is coming out, that's a societal benefit.
New Deal
right.
is putting a positive spin on something, which is positive, but it has to be framed positive way.
Yes, I wouldn't even say it was putting a positive spin on it. It is a positive move.
I recommend that you look at the video of John McDonnell speaking on Green Jobs and Green New Deal, which I recorded last week when he spoke in this area.
I've seen it on your on the blog. I haven't watched it.
And following on from Pete's question, how important and how would you see it developing as regards our work with trade unions?
Well, I think that's a very big part of the movement in general. I mean, the Green Party is there to, one of the first things that we're there to do is to try and improve the environment, and that is through the work practices that this country produces, and that means the trade unions. So what I would say, and also in what you were saying with the Green New Deal, is that I think often people maybe associate with the Green Party with just this one issue. So to be totally frank, as well as I 100% agree with it, I think it's important, but this wouldn't be the main focus that I would want to run on, where I do run. I just don't want to make it look like the Green Party is simply banging on about this the whole time. I don't in any way want to say that it's not important, because it is important. But what I would, so rather than trade unions or something like that, I would look at something like the ozone layer, which is the smallest it's been in decades now, and that was because of the international community working together and managing to solve, not solve, but to get it going in the right direction. And so that sort of larger picture is where I would try to divert as honestly as possible any sort of questions that are maybe a little bit caught up in the detail of the Green New Deal or how the trade union movement's relations are with that, because I don't think that's something that the people in the street will really be interested in.
I wasn't really asking about how you spoke to people in the street. How would you, or how do you see yourself as working for the trade union?
Well, as a trade union member of the National Union of Teachers, I think they're hugely important, and they have a great history in our country. And I think they're one of the more important organisations that I would want to associate myself with.
I think trade unions are essential. I think they're fundamental to how a society should work. The damage that the Conservative Party managed to do to them so magnificently well in the 80s and 90s has got to be redressed. It's a matter of party policy that 0 hours contracts are stopped, that we have proper living wage rather than this sort of token figure, and the trade union movement needs strengthening and given some power back. I am no longer a member of a trade union. I was a member of Equity, but when I stopped being an actor, I left. And I'm appalled at what has happened to the acting profession since Equity lost its teeth, in effect. Particularly niche industries. I mean, all industries need trade union power behind them, but niche industries like the acting profession absolutely need them. All sorts of rights disappeared overnight at the stroke of the pen, and I would be very happy to engage with trade unions and talk to them and find deals and find a way of giving them their power back. It's very important.
Thank you.
So my question is sort of about the global climate movement that's been developing. What are your thoughts on sort of working internationally, particularly with people who are on the front line of the ongoing crisis, is places like the Amazon rainforest? What efforts would you make to make sure those voices are put first, and that, like in Parliament, the UK would then work for those people?
The planet is a unit. It's one thing, and it is an international crisis. It is a global crisis, and we can only deal with it by talking to other countries and by finding consensus amongst those countries. Quite what we're going to do about China and America, I don't know, and Russia. The 3 greatest polluters on the planet. I don't know what the solution is there. Quite what's going on in Brazil at the moment horrifies me. But whatever the United Kingdom does, for as long as the United Kingdom exists, is chicken feed compared to the rest of the planet. And so we have to have the strongest ties possible with other green parties around the planet, and indeed all other environment-based bodies, entities, pressure groups, you name it. We need to be in there, and we need to be leading in this country on that.
Simon? I mean, I agree with all of that. It's crazy to be destroying the lungs of our planet like we are, and just watching it go by. Again, though, I would like to just focus on when there are success stories rather than, because I do feel that I mean, I don't know the rest of you, but sometimes I wake up like, oh God, I'm worried about the giant, that place in the Pacific with all the microplastics and so on. It's constantly, it's almost anxiety ridden, and I would want the Green Party, the Green movement around the world, to not only be highlighting these issues, definitely, certainly, and dealing with them, but also, you know, bringing forward a positive message of how we are actually making some difference to it.
Can I give you a hypothetical then? It's actually a true instance that happened on Sunday. I was at the Queen's Park Day with Friends of the Earth on their street. They had a very detailed poster about the impact of various degree rises on the planet. And a young girl came along about 10 or 11 years old and just stood in front reading it all very seriously for 5-10 minutes. And I spoke to her and said, you know, are you very interested in this? And she said yes. And I said, why? And she said, well, my family lives in Algeria and I'm worried about what's going to happen to them. And if all these things happen, what do you say to her?
It's terrible, isn't it? And but that shock and trying to scare tactic, I mean, it definitely has a place, and it's definitely needed to try and kickstart some movements. But at the same time, there's got to be a more positive message that can be brought in there as well. There's a YouTube channel I watch, Minute Earth, which it shows some of the more positive things that are being done rather than just the negatives. So we've got to try and give that little girl, that next generation, the hope that something can be done. It's not just this is a mess and it can never be sorted out. So it needs to, that poster there definitely has a place, but I really hope that girl didn't go home terrified because of it. I mean, I don't think that's solving any situations to do that. So I would want to emphasise the positives that can be done, and to say to her, well, this is why we need you to help, and you can do just the little things like not dropping litter.
I would just signed her up to come on Friday. That's the first thing I'd have done.
I did talk to her about that.
And is she coming?
Don't you worry. I don't know. She's 10.
Okay. Well,
Follows on. What would you give as your 3 main reasons for voting Green, Brent, when canvassing people on the doorstep in a forthcoming general election?
do you want to go first?
Oh, yes, I do. 3 main points. So, firstly, that we can have, so, first point is that we will have a real impact, and that our voices, your voices can be heard. So, number 1, so, we can have an impact and our voices can be heard. Number 2 is that we represent the people of this constituency, what's important to them, which is not only Green matters, but certainly those as well. And that Brexit is a chief concern for us and something that needs to be sorted out.
My 3 issues would first and foremost be the environment, that I would be standing for the environment and tackling Brent Council and others on their environmental issues as much as possible. Secondly, absolutely to stand as a hard Remain candidate. I'm appalled about what Brexit is potentially going to do to the country, and that will affect everybody, whether they're in Brent or in the Outer Hebrides or in the north of Wales or somewhere in Belfast. It has to be stopped. And then thirdly, I'm very, very, very strongly standing in favour of proportional representation. We need a fundamental rethinking of our political system. These are all national issues, I'm aware, rather than local issues. But those are my 3 most important issues that I would be standing on.
Well, My question is, what you might be asked about, unless people have forgotten about it by the time of the election, is what do you think about Caroline Lucas's proposal to have an all-female cabinet?
She herself said it would never happen. I actually think it's an extremely good idea. I'm on record as saying in my workplace that I would always choose to have women running the companies that I've worked for rather than men. I think there was and it was never going to happen, and she herself said it would never happen. But I was very much in favour of it. She unfortunately got a lot of flack for it, as she gets for a lot of things. But it was a very interesting idea to throw into the mix. That's how I feel about it.
Interesting reply. Simon.
I think it was. I think it's when I teach children, it's mainly the girls who get things done and get things done right. An all-female cabinet, was it? I think an all-female parliament, or at least for a day, would probably get a few things done quicker than otherwise. So it's a really interesting idea, considering that the female population of Parliament is about 25% at the moment, and obviously the UK as a whole is 50%. There is some. It's a statement to catch attention, and I think it actually can help us think about things. It can't happen like that because that's not what democratic representation how it works. But I do like the idea of it, and I do think that there are some ways forward with that thinking.
We make a good team, don't we?
I think so.
Yeah, interesting reply from two male candidates.
Just a point of information is that as I say, if the election happens in November, you probably won't get asked that, although you might if you were standing right now. But as a point of information, the party supports something called the 50-50 campaign, which wishes to have equal numbers of male and female MPs.
Yes.
I think one of the things that she got criticised for was that she put forward, like people put forward their best football team. She put forward her best. She wasn't really proposing that there would be a cabinet.
No, she wasn't.
She was saying, if I had my best football team cabinet, it would be all women. But what she did wrong, and she admitted, was she chose all white women.
Yes.
She ignored
she made
some
some
of the
mistakes.
fantastic non-white women in the House of Commons. So that was a cock-up, really.
Yes.
What do they call it? Not football. When you have your dream team.
It's like an all-star team. An all-star
Yeah,
team.
so my boys were now in their 30s, 40s, still do that.
I'm very fond of the Facebook meme that talks about the gender of the mass murderers in America. Because there aren't any, the perpetrators of the mass shootings, because they're all men. And anyway, it's enough of that.
I don't think I'd agree with either of you on that one, because I think to actually put politics to the side and think it's just a matter of gender is ignoring the fact that some of the members of the cabinet were not particularly progressive. And you think about people like Theresa May or Margaret Thatcher or some of the women in the cabinet now, Priti Patel, choosing them just because they're female would just not be a good idea. Can I ask you another question though? Because you're focusing on the broader issues, but in my work in Brent, and I get contacted by people, the biggest issue for most people in Brent, apart from not having enough money to make ends meet, is housing. And the fact that there isn't sufficient affordable housing in the area, that things are being built that are let internationally or bought internationally and let on sort of Airbnb and so on. Many people in crowded homes, a lot of people, 5,000 or more, on the waiting list for social housing, and many more who were taken off that list arbitrarily because they didn't quite match the criteria. It's a huge issue, and to try and get to talk to people about some of those wider issues like climate change and so on, when they're worried about a roof over their head, or the landlord throwing them out, or the landlord demanding sex in lieu of rent, how would you address the housing issue on the doorstep?
I'm very aware that housing is an immense crisis, and not just in Brent, generally across London, elsewhere in the country as well, but it's a real problem in London. Brent Council does not have a good record. There's been much too much. The library was knocked down in Willesden Green a few years ago. It was supposed to be to make a lot of social housing available. In fact, there's a very tiny amount of social housing available, if any, none. Social housing is the responsibility, apart from organisations like Genesis, it is the responsibility of the council. The Thatcher years destroyed a large part of our housing stock. The whole notion of being able to sell cheap housing off to long-term social tenants, that has to be stopped, because that's where the crisis really started. If I get elected, I will put Brent under as much pressure as possible to stop those practices and to really invest in social housing. London cannot function without people who don't earn £200,000 a year. We have to have cleaners, we have to have nurses, we have to have teachers, for God's sake. We have to have people at all different levels of society, and many of those people need proper, decent social housing, not terrible landlords charging them extreme amounts of money for cupboards. And you also need to be able to have families living in an area like this. The whole area was changed drastically in the 60s when all this wonderful housing stock was cut into two to make flats because landlords could make more money out of them. And that has to be stopped.
How?
How? I don't know. How do you think?
You're the candidate.
Yes. I'll have a better answer than that, won't I?
No, I haven't got an answer for how other than it would be a priority of mine, because someone living in Brent North, it is a huge issue for me, and someone in my mid-30s and earning quite a bit above the national average wage, and as a teacher, I live in one of those one rooms. It's a key worker place for doctors, nurses, teachers behind the hospital. I've lived there for 10 years and I've been saving for that. I'm still not in a position to pay the deposit for a mortgage. And I don't know, I'm sure there are lots of other reasons, but I also feel that that's at least impacted my decision for family planning, because I don't have a family yet, because I don't actually understand how anyone really manages to have...
Isn't accommodation about to be redeveloped in the big Norfolk Park plan?
No.
So is it network housing?
It's network housing, yeah. I mean, if that's happening, it's not right there, and there are still cockroaches in the kitchen. So it's
Read
it's
Webby
not
Matters. It's got all the details of what they're planning to do there.
Well, anyway, so I'm interested for change, and I don't have an answer either, except that would be, I mean, if I had an opportunity to make a difference, that would probably be the main local thing I would want to change. I mean, it's not a going on record thing, but clause 4 of the Labour Constitution which is nationalising housing, as was one of the more interesting parts of the Labour movement, I thought.
Yeah, something you may want to think about is things like land value tax.
We really need to have 2 or 3 key points, like stopping right to buy, somehow strengthening rent tax. One of the first things that Margaret Thatcher did was abolish rent tax, abolish rent controls. So that did, in one way, help. It opened up the housing market, because prior to 79, rented accommodation was very, very hard to get.
It was also
After 79, it became easier, but then it's gone, the pendulum has gone so far the other way, and now the chance of having a home is becoming impossible, and so we need to do something with rent tax, in my opinion, to somehow bring them back. If you take them too far, then rent will go through the roof, but a series of moderate measures to enable particularly families who are in accommodation to know they've got a long-term future in that accommodation, and not just short-hold and be kicked out after a few years. And more regulation, because where there are, this is my view, where there's accommodation, and tons of accommodation now is in rampant multiple occupation.
Yes.
Therefore landlords are raking in money when they shouldn't.
And
if we could stop that, but then that needs more people going around to check up on them and more safeguarding for whistleblowers.
But when, I mean, there's the guy, I can't remember his name, you'll know his name, there's the guy who's got lots of properties in Relton Green, who's a multi-millionaire, and he's been told by the council time and time again that he's got to do this X, Y and Z to his properties, and he just doesn't do it. And I don't understand why, I mean, Brent, who are the people who should be in control of this situation, they have not followed through. And
they have fined him, but he gets such a huge income from those rents that he can just shrug it off.
Right.
What I
But then
think in
Brent
terms of
Mencap
policy would be to be able to actually take over those properties on the basis of he's not a good landlord, etc., etc.
Is there the legal structure to do that?
No, there should be legislation. If we're talking about what the Green Party would like to do.
Yes.
I agree with that. The problem with Brent doesn't have any money, doesn't have any staff to do anything about this, to enforce it. We need more money, we need to increase the enforcement and come down heavier on landlords.
Yeah. Is we taking over properties?
I think we need to have buzzwords, but you know, to have 3 or 4 buzzwords or buzz policies like that.
I think we've got to.
Is there a phrase for? Is there a terminology for taking properties away from landlords and putting them into public management?
Yeah.
To expropriation.
I don't think it can be done.
No, but we would have to campaign for it. And same for the land value tax, it's worth following that through and looking at Sean Berry's work from the London Assembly on housing.
Right.
There's quite a lot of cases there. Just one, again, a bit of role play really. You come to the front door, I'm at the front door, I come to you and you say you're from the Green Party. And I say to you, I'm not going to vote Green. You want to take my car away. You want to make me stop eating meat. You're a whole load of green fascists.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty harsh. You're driving your car in London. Where do you work that you're driving a car?
In Brent North.
You don't want to walk. All right. We're
cycle.
You wait till you start putting.
I can't walk.
Has that happened? Have you
Yes.
had anyone say anything like that?
Yes, I've had that one, but the other one, which I always tell people, is this car driver came out and said, "Are you from the Green Party?" And I said, "Yes. Can you do something about this tree? The leaves keep falling on my car and messing the paperwork up." Seriously, people see us as moralistic and potentially dictatorial.
Yeah.
Something we actually think that's probably the only way to combat climate change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to keep saying it, but I think that's an image that we need to move a little bit away from, at least, to try and appreciate that there are more positives in it, and that if someone was to say, "You want to take away my car and you want to stop me eating meat," it's like, well, no, I want us to save the planet. That's what I would like to do. I'd like to have something so the next generation can inherit it. There will still be cars. There are greener alternatives to it, and you can see them with the electric, pump things, and with driverless cars and all this sort of stuff, and cycles, superhighways that they're trying to put into there, and growing meat in labs and stuff like that. So there are alternatives to it. It doesn't have to be that everything's banned. We're not the party that no, you can't do that, and no, you can't do that. We're just trying to find a solution that works.
Yes, I agree. And the work that's been done on there hasn't been enough work done on the solutions. Electric cars are obviously the future, but the work has not really been done on them. We were promised when, what's the carbon, the new super fine carbon? Graphene. We were promised that graphene was going to create a whole new wealth of technologies, not least battery technology. Where is that? I can absolutely understand that people are concerned about losing their cars, but they won't lose their cars. They might just be using a different fuel. I would also second your point, though. I can't remember whose point it was, about why is it really necessary for you to drive a car in London? And if so, we should also be looking at what's the public transport infrastructure in that area and probably improving it. I mean, the advances made on the buses to make the buses less polluting has been immense in the last few years. I mean, you know, an awful lot of work has been done on that. And I would encourage people to use those as much as possible. Cycling and also walking is good for your long-term physical and mental health. So I would encourage.
What I'd also probably add to that is, you say, look, I mean, obviously in an ideal world, no one would have cars and probably meeting, but also the Green Party isn't out to be going around to each individual person saying you can't do this, because that's not enough. And sort of, I would tell a person that the big priority is sort of sorting out that 100 companies who do the 70% of emissions. Mm-hmm. It's taking down the system itself that is causing this damage, and remembering that there are certainly people who are doing a lot more damage, sort of the CEOs of oil companies, than Gary, who lives in Brent North and drives a car.
Yes.
So I think assure them that it's sort of thinking about and providing alternatives and making it easier for you not to have to use your car, to not to have to eat meat, because we don't want to force you to anything, but also we recognise that individual action isn't enough to do this, and that
absolutely
we're going to take down the real culprits. So don't worry, Gary, we're going to leave your car alone for now.
Yeah, I entirely agree with that. I think it's very, very important that we say it's not about, yes, the individual has their own role to play in society, but actually it's the people who run the society, the big corporations, the multinationals, etc. They're the ones who are really responsible. Yes, we buy their products, but we buy their products because they're available. And if they're not around, then another range of products will come in that will do almost the same thing and give us almost as much fun, perhaps a different sort of fun. And life will be able to continue without raping the planet.
It's called Green New Deal.
Yeah, that is what the Green New Deal would essentially be.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting. Greta Thunberg in America, in New York, was interviewed on the One Show yesterday. I don't know if you've seen the video, it's a good video. And they talked to her about what impact she has made in terms of people in Europe stopping going on short plane journeys and deciding to go by train and so on. Apparently there's a real sort of upsurge of using alternative means because they are feeling guilty. And she's made them feel guilty, so perhaps there is a space for that as well.
You can say, look, listen to your kids. You call it fascism, but another answer is, I use a car, I have to say, but listen to your kids, think of their future, and some personal changes in everyone's lifestyle will make things. I know there's big corporations, but each individual person has to, at the end of the day, when they face whoever it is they face, has to say, did I do my bit? Or did I just contribute to the demise?
I mean, personally, I feel, I wouldn't say physically sick, that's a bit extreme, but I bitterly resent buying single-use plastic. Yeah. And sometimes one's in a circumstance where you cannot avoid it. And I have a physical response to it. So.
I have one other topic I just wanted to touch on. I'm interested in your opinions, but legalising marijuana, that's something that I'm interested in as an idea, but I'm also not fussed about pushing it or not. Is there a Green Party position on it?
Yeah, you can see it's to legalise marijuana.
My
And to decriminalise other drugs as well.
My personal view is that all drugs should be decriminalised.
Goes down with enhancement.
Yeah.
Sorry? Goes down well in
Enhancement,
Willesden.
yeah.
Right.
Well, it goes down well in Willesden.
It wouldn't go down badly for us, wouldn't it? And your position is to decriminalise all drugs? All drugs?
No, it's the party. It's Maxim's position, but it's also it's the party's position. So.
I didn't realise it was all drugs. Okay.
Because really Portugal's the best example, but whenever you take a sort of public health approach to drugs instead of a crime approach, you get results. But also thinking about sort of not just the drug takers, but sort of the whole industry that surrounds drugs. Of course. When you decriminalise that, a lot of that sort of goes away. When I think about sort of the Mexican cartels, if the US liberalises drug laws overnight, disappear. Someone else, they can find a different thing to do, but it's just a matter of sort of taking away all the different things by changing laws in the West, which means that sort of trail of blood stops.
Yes.
Wouldn't it just be big corporations coming in, selling these products and effectively increasing the consumption, because they would, as they do with everything else, artificially encourage demand for their own profits, and therefore that would have a detrimental effect on the
and that's why.
Well, it would depend on what the drug is and quite how it's marketed.
Yeah, because they wouldn't necessarily be legal; it would just be legal.
Yes.
So, and in fact, it may still be illegal to go around selling crack to people, but certainly to take it would be decriminalised.
You want to say something, Pete?
No. Well, I do want to say something, but not on that topic.
Okay. Another question.
Well, another question, yeah. I'd like to know the candidates' views on health and social care, and what do you think the Green Party should be doing about those areas?
I was reading in the 22nd Manifesto today about the Green Party's attitude to mental health, which I think is excellent. That there should be no social stigma, there should be no barrier between physical health and mental health, and I would support and encourage that immensely. Mental health is something that affects, I think, 1 in 10 of us.
I would say everyone.
And in some way, everybody. So I entirely support that. And of course, as with any sensible party, the Green Party and I am determined to keep the NHS free and available to everybody who needs it. That's really all that can be said on the subject.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that the NHS is one of the things, when you think of Britain and something to be proud of, it's the free health service that we led the world on. And so I agree with everything that you said, especially that mental health thing. I think that's so important for all of us. The only thing I temper with it, though, is that like with a party that maybe is seen as not having a chance of forming a government, is that you can just make a wish list of everything's going to be free and all this sort of stuff. And I haven't got the answer now, but I would want to be able to demonstrate that we have a fiscal plan to actually pay for the NHS rather than simply saying, yes, it's always going to be free. But I mean, that's what I want.
But the fiscal, what I've read, the fiscal planning is in place to do
No,
that.
so what I mean is that I would need to familiarise myself a bit better.
The big problem with this, I think, was referred to as social care.
Yeah.
It's costing so much, and it's
Yes.
now whether it's long-term care home or just Meals on Wheels and that sort of thing. So whether we should have some sort of insurance system, designated at the moment, local authorities around the country suffering, and some of the Tory ones like Northampton are just literally going bankrupt. And
but again, I would argue, why is this up to local councils to decide about how the money is spent? Surely, the tax is a national issue, national insurance is a national issue.
So that's the question. Should Green Party pursue the idea of, I don't know what the policy is, I haven't looked it up, but is it a national?
Well, I think we'd want to bring together the NHS and social care. Yeah. But following on from that, because this is another doorstep one, particularly in Brent North, because of the nature of some of the population. What's your view on assisted dying?
They're very painful stories to listen to, and I feel very strongly when you go through this, and I do think there's definitely some reasons that can allow you to have assisted dying. And certainly, someone who helps you go to Switzerland or wherever shouldn't be counted as assistant, as helping them commit suicide. But I also think that it is a slippery slope towards a family who maybe has an older relative who they don't want to care for, and it could just be like, well, then if we could go with that assisting dying route. So it's it's a very difficult topic, which is, I guess, why it's one that's brought up. But in general, I think that is something that we should be allowing in circumstances.
I'm a huge supporter of the whole concept. I think it's a fundamental human right. If you are of sound mind and it's the decision that you've taken that you should be able to end your life in the way that you choose to end it. And it's not going to be for everybody, and it should not be for everybody. As far as I don't know enough about it, but as far as I know, the countries where it is allowed, principally in Switzerland and in Holland, I'm not aware of any abuses of the system, and I'm sure that there are all sorts of safeguards in place. There would have to be safeguards in place in order for it to succeed. But I mean, my mother's partner died about 3 months ago, and I was there with him the day before he died. And his daughter was there, his daughter's wife was there, another carer, and I was there, and my mother was there. And he'd already gone, and was not in any particular suffering. Fortunately, he wasn't in pain, and he'd already gone. So, and more than one person said you wouldn't let your family dog go through this.
Yep.
So I'm a huge advocate for it.
Okay, to end, we're running a little bit on a more optimistic note with Maxim here. How would you two work as election candidates with the young Greens and young people in general?
I long, and we've talked about this before, I long to have a Join the Green Party leaflet. I want people to join. I want as many people as possible to join, and particularly young people. I'm going to be absolutely honest, I don't know enough about the work of Young Greens. I read your emails and I read the stuff, and it's your planet, and your generation are going to be the people who are running the country in 20, 30 years' time. So I would want to get involved as much as possible, because that's the future.
I feel like I've contributed to the
Yes, you
Young
want
Greens,
me to.
encouraging them to sign up. If you're in my class, you have to give a very good reason to not join a political party of any sort. I can't force them, but pretty much every year someone has. And especially since I became a Green member, most of them tend to go for Green, although I'm trying to not exert a bias on it. I enjoy working with children, that's why I'm a teacher. I'd be very happy to do that, and I think that they tend to be the most passionate and committed to these things, so I enjoy that.
When I stood as a candidate in Chalk Hill, where I'm a school governor and worked with the school one day a week as a volunteer, the kids went around saying, "You're the green man, aren't you?" I said, "No, that's a pub." Okay, to our members who are watching this on video, you should have received an email with your voting link, so please do vote, having listened to these two candidates. Thank you.